Welcome. Today I will show you how I made these wonderfully attractive sound panels. They can come in multiple colors. They perform much better than the Amazon or eBay foam that you might find. And they also come in at a surprisingly affordable price. So here's how my voice sounded before I installed the panels. It almost sounds as if the noise I'm hearing comes after I've actually clapped my hands. Of course, we put up drywall, so that's a very dense, hard surface, which is excellent at reflecting sound. And here's how it sounds now. So as you can tell, there's a big difference. A lot less echoes, a lot less ringing. In general, a huge improvement. In any case, this video will detail the entire manufacturing process, from cutting and laminating the Rockwool to doing upholstery to mounting the panels. At the end of the video, there will also be testing, so you can see more side-by-side and direct comparisons of the before and after. And at the end, if you're interested, there will also be a cost breakdown, so you can see how much this project cost me, what each of the individual materials were and how much they cost. And also, if you were to attempt a similar project, you could estimate how much it would cost based on the size of room. The first thing to do is to cut the Rockwool. It cuts quite easily with a sharp box cutter. However, because it is made out of stone fibers, it's abrasive and it dulls the blade out quite quickly. Rockwool is not like fiberglass. It doesn't cause irritation to the skin, but of course it's still recommended to wear gloves. Wearing a mask, however, is a requirement, because the stone fibers can enter the lungs, and like fiberglass and asbestos, it can cause permanent scarring. I primarily chose to cut 2 foot by 2 foot panels because I find they generally look the best and are the best compromise between several factors, such as ease of install. They're not too heavy. The construction is quite simple because the Rockwool comes in 4 by 2 sheets. And to make a 2 by 2 panel, you simply have to cut that in half. And by using the minimal amount of brackets, they require a lot less work. After cutting the Rockwool, the next step was to laminate it into 3-inch thick sheets, because the factory sheets come in 1.5-inch thickness. The added thickness is important to allow the panels to absorb lower frequency sounds. But the joint between the 2 sheets has to be flexible for this effect to work. Thus, spray adhesive was the best choice, forming a flexible joint and allowing an even application on the porous Rockwool. It's also important not to be stingy with the adhesive. I went through several cans during the project. It is worth noting that this part of the project was very messy. Spray adhesive gets everywhere, and the fibers will land on the adhesive, covering everything nearby in sticky stone fibers, which can later only be removed with lacquer thinner. This really should ideally be done outside, but at the time the weather was far too cold. After the panels were laminated, the hard backboard had to be attached, so I chose to use spray adhesive again because of the porous surfaces. I chose to use 3/8 OSB, because it's cheap, it's reasonably strong, and it's also not too heavy. Luckily, I was able to be somewhat stingy with the adhesive, as the fabric would hold on the panel anyways, and the performance is not affected by how well the Rockwool is secured to any other surface. Cutting the fabric was a bit of a challenge. I was a bit new to the process. However, I eventually discovered the best method was to fold over the fabric and cut several panels at the same time. As for the fabric choice, I wanted something primarily cheap, so I went to the bargain bin of the local fabric store and found a really good deal on some 97% cotton, 3% spandex blends. Unlike artificial plastic fabrics like polyester, the cotton resists grinding sparks and solvents a lot better because it doesn't melt, and the spandex in the mix allowed the fabric to stretch and made eliminating wrinkles during the upholstery much easier. All the upholstery followed the same basic process. First I centered the panel on the fabric, and then I pulled the middle of one side tight and I stapled it. I then worked my way from the middle of that very staple to the edges of that side, and once I had that side finished, I did the side directly opposite. The second set of sides was a tad bit different. I did the same, but I stopped 4 or so inches from the edge. This was to allow me the extra looseness I needed to fold the corners. So what we do is we start by taking this like this, fold it kind of to where we just stapled. That'll be a starting point. And to eliminate wrinkling, we take this fabric, push it in there, and then we take it like that. And if it's hanging over the edge, what you do is you just roll it in here. And you keep rolling it and pulling it. There we go. And there's still a bunch of crap in there, so we'll just shove that in until we end up with a lumpy, albeit mostly unwrinkled corner. So then we pull tight, hammer in corner staple, and we can kind of fold this here and pull that tight. Staple, staple, and staple. There. See, that's another good corner. Just like that. Same crap here. There we go. That's another panel done. So the last step in manufacturing the panels would be the mounts. Normally, if it was all on vertical surfaces, I would just use some traditional like picture frame mounts or something like that. However, a lot of these panels would be going up on funny angles, and as such I needed a really secure way to stick them to the wall. So I got some bar stock and I drilled some holes in it, and I cut it down to 1.5 inch long pieces, and I screwed each aluminum bracket into the panels, and I found out that they're actually incredibly sturdy. In any case, that was a lot of work to manufacture, so I decided for all the corner panels, because they needed to be mounted on 45-degree angles and they were a lot lighter, that I would just use some galvanized sheet instead, because I could easily cut it with scissors and bend it and then drill the holes, and I found that it was a lot easier to make it that way. The final step in the project was mounting the panels. The larger panels were actually quite a bit of a challenge. I had to manage the weight whilst keeping them in the exact right position and screwing down the panels to the wall, all whilst managing my broken ankle. On a vertical surface, it may be possible to pre-mark the holes. However, I certainly recommend having another person to assist in the install. So welcome to the testing phase of the video. The first test will be the angle grinder test, where I run the angle grinder a certain amount of distance away from a phone, which I'm using to record sound pressure. And the quieter that the grinder measures, the better. As you could see, the improvements were somewhat marginal. However, that is to be expected, as most of the sound comes directly from the angle grinder to the phone. However, there was a small decrease from the absorption of reflected noises. In any case, the next test is going to consist of me playing a predetermined audio clip and hearing the difference. Now, I may have accidentally messed around with the equalizer settings a bit, but even still, if you listen, you will hear a difference in how much of the music is reflected back in echoes. this. Here's the clap test. It's great for detecting how reflective a room is towards sound. So here's how it sounded before. And here's how it sounds now. So if you listen, there's a very faint ringing, and that comes from the metal shelving I installed. But otherwise, the room is completely dead in that it reflects almost no sound. So, big improvement. The best-selling acoustic foam on Amazon comes in at $1.32 per square foot. It is a 1-inch thick, low-density wedge design, which does not absorb low-frequency sounds very well. Now, my panels are a little bit different, being made up of several components. The first off is the Rockwool. A bag of Rockwool costs $60 and can be used to make 6 panels. The OSB backer board costs $14 and can be used to make 8 panels. The spray adhesive, a single 400-gram can of spray adhesive in my testing was enough to make 2 to 3 panels, and that costs $10 per can. The brackets are highly dependent on exactly how you want to mount the panels. In my case, they were free because I made them from materials I had lying around. However, even if you did buy pre-made brackets, I would estimate that $2 per panel would be a reasonable amount. As for the covering, there are a few options. In my case, the fabric I bought cost $6.50 per linear meter, and that came on a 55-inch wide roll, and I was only able to cut my 32.5-inch panel sizes out of it, so I left about 40% wastage on the roll. Despite the large amount of wastage, the panel's cost for the fabric came out to be about $5. Now, an alternative option would be to actually take the low-density acoustic foam and use that as a covering, but that would require a little bit more spray adhesive, so overall it would be a little bit more expensive, and it might be hard to get the sound panels aligned properly to look good. But in any case, it does improve the high frequency performance a little bit, so that might be something worth looking into. But fabric is also a good option. So the total cost per panel is about $22 or $5.50 per square foot. In comparison to the Amazon panels, they are a lot more expensive. Looking at other alternatives on the market that would actually have a similar performance, I was not able to find anything that came even close to these panels in terms of performance versus cost. Now, as for the actual room, my shed is roughly 80 square feet. This project cost a total of $250, meaning that came out to about $3.12 per square foot of floor space. Now, I am using this as a recording space, so I installed a lot more paneling than was strictly necessary for comfort. And I also have a bunch of weird angles on my ceiling, so that means I required a lot more panels. So for a more normal room, I believe a reasonable estimate would be $1.75 per square foot. But in my case, I ended up paying more due to those factors. So that's the cost breakdown. I think you'll find that considering the performance, which is just wow, it's actually quite affordable. I would also like to thank the channel Tech Ingredients for giving me the idea to do this project and providing the test results needed to make a proper decision on what materials to use. If you're interested in more quantifiable test results of various materials for sound paneling, there will be a link to one of his videos in the description below, as well as the rest of his channel, because I think he does a lot of very interesting projects. In any case, if you enjoyed this project, I would implore you to like, and if you're interested in any of my other content, which consists of electronic stuff, mechanical design, and some improvement stuff like this, please check out my channel, and if you're interested in that, you can subscribe. If you have any questions, post them in the comments below and I'll try to get back to you. Thanks for watching.